Alright everyone, there's a funny link in the description. It's time for your humorous video of the day with NowThis Media, and I guess this is it's one of those groups that hyper edits everything and everything's lots of jump cuts and bright colors and people being preachy, and this is what passes as news and entertainment these days for the low info crowd. I guess this is their attempt, I think, to brand to Gen Z. I really hope that Generation Z isn't actually into this particular kind of obvious engineering and advertising because it's pretty cloying and weird. It looks like an episode of the Power Rangers, if you know what I mean. Anyway, link in the description. It's funny time here. Apparently, if you say you guys, I wonder if this extends to y'all. If you say you guys, you're misgendering all women present. You're only addressing the men present. And so you should stop doing that for, I guess reasons. That's going to be kind of hard since the vast majority of people in the United States, when addressing an interchangeable group of people, say you guys. And I'm going to continue saying it because there's literally nobody, I've never met anybody who's actually offended at this. I have a feeling that at some point just a group of drunken college kids were sitting around discussing what offended them and they dreamed this up. And they talked to their women's studies professor, who promptly agreed with them and wrote something for the university so that they could pin it up on the walls saying not to misgender groups of people. But the thing is, guys, as a reference to Guy Fawkes, doesn't have anything to do specifically with maleness. It doesn't have to do with that. It's just a colloquialism. And that's actually mentioned in the videos well, you could say it's just a colloquial term. But that's not actually the case. Well, yes, it is. That's how it's used. In its actual pragmatic application, it means a group of individuals in proximity to you without regards to its gender composition. A girl can say you guys to a group of other girls. It's not considered verbally inappropriate to do so. The idea that there's some symbology behind it that's deeper, the average person has no clue where the concept of guy even comes from. The average person doesn't have a fucking clue about language structure. This both means that it exonerates them of any blame. They're not trying to misgender or be non-inclusive to anyone. At the same time, it shows the vulnerability of the population to linguistic propaganda. I've spoken about this for years. The problem is that most people don't understand how language can be used to control. They can literally control your mind. If you want to learn how to control somebody's mind, learn about language, because that's how they understand the world. Communication and understanding go hand in hand. It's the only way we can understand the world. It's like language tends to be structured around dichotomies. How would I know that something is dark unless there's also the concept of something not being dark, something being light? It's given a separate term. There are cultures in the world today that don't have a word for the color blue and would relegate it as a form of green. Well, obviously, as far as wavelength goes, yes, there's a blue, but that entire chunk of wavelength is seen as basically just a variance of itself within those linguistic structures. If you attempt to teach the individual about the difference between green and blue for wavelength purposes, they're not going to know what the fuck you're talking about. There are tribes in this world, studying this in linguistic anthropology at UVM, that speak about wet and dry. That don't have, some of them I think don't have a color for word for orange as well, if I remember correctly. Is it orange or is it green? I can't remember, one of those two. And so you have some groups that only have 4 main colors instead of the sort of 6 that we usually have on the color wheel, the basic ones. I know that there's 3 base colors, 6 sort of main colors, and then you have all the different variances. And you have darker and lighter versions of them, but there are some people that don't see the world that way. Imagine if someone had a deformity where the rods and cones in their eye were capable of seeing further in the wavelength, and how weird that would be. I wonder what sort of weird shit they would see. Maybe they'd start seeing ETs or something. Really, they'd end up on the Alex Jones show. The idea that it's malicious to say you guys is itself hilarious. I would say this is an attempt at social engineering, but it's also linguistic propaganda. This is an attempt to eliminate a term that is used, in a wanton sense by the average person in the U.S. population without thought to what it actually means, because its only meaning is in the context of speaking to an interchangeable group of people. Doesn't matter what its composition is, it has no real deep purpose. This is an attempt to take language and both weaponize it and explain the weaponization of it. This is an attempt for political reasons. There's no the idea that inclusivity, by the way, is even important is pretty funny. Why the hell does someone have to be inclusive? People should do what they want, and if other people don't like it, they should voluntarily dissociate from it. The very term, like, think of all the buzz terms that people throw around. It's like you can't debate someone if they're the ones deciding the reality, the parameters within which you're debating. The problem is with linguistic warfare, with linguistic propaganda, terms are utilized, they're invented out of thin air, or they're given different meanings to what they actually have, like the term alt-tech. Alt-tech literally means alternative technology. Alt-tech stands for groups that are highly innovative. They're taking technology online especially, and they're changing it around, innovating it in some way, like BitChute, using P2P infrastructure to deliver videos to people. That's a novel concept. It's something YouTube doesn't do that. Dailymotion doesn't do that. It's a novel approach. But BuzzFeed attempted to label alt-tech alt-right tech. Now, that's not what it means. It's not where the term comes from. It has no political meaning, alt-tech. Not among any person using that term. It was an attempt at linguistic propaganda, one which failed by and large. I saw some far leftists bandying the concept around, but by and large, BuzzFeed doesn't exactly deliver information to a lot of people anyway. Like, their engagement tends to be fairly low because they suck, so it basically failed. Linguistic propaganda is very, very dangerous. People need to understand more about language if they want to defend against such things. You cannot debate someone who decides the parameters of the game you're debating. You can't win at a game where the other person can change the rules at a moment's notice and just say, fuck it. The left loves to do this. The right likes to do this as well. Take a look at some political language sometime and really think about what you're actually... Don't read it passively, read it actively. Think about what's actually being said on the second sort of deeper level. You'll be astonished. By the way, it's exhausting because you end up analyzing everything around you, and it gets fucking overwhelming. It'll cause me insomnia sometimes thinking about some of the weird shit that I see. When I'm watching a politician's speech, I have to keep in mind that I'm psychoanalyzing the politician on a level that most people don't. And so it actually, it can be enjoyable. If you just sort of tune it out and listen passively, it can be enjoyable. Listening to, like, Trump or fucking John Kerry launch off into a speech about polar bears or something, it can be kind of fun. When you analyze what they're actually saying, what the actual meaning is, totally different. It gets kind of weird, actually, too. Some people do it even without recognizing it. Some people engage in linguistic propaganda like they're a cyborg or something. They've been programmed by some third-party entity. And other people, like highly trained politicians, utilize that linguistic propaganda for their own benefit. Trump does this. He does. He utilizes propaganda on a daily basis. His fans need to understand this. He manipulates language, too. I don't believe he does it for malevolent purposes, strictly speaking, but he does it for self-serving purposes, for political purposes. I mean, it's insane to suggest that "you guys" is used in common parlance as anything other than a generic term for a group of people. The idea that it is bad, by the way, to use a term that is technically specifically male. Why? What if you started using "you gals" or something? I mean, who would give a fuck? By the way, that does actually happen. I believe that if it's used in certain contexts, saying like "you gals," especially if it's a group of all men, would be considered humorous anyway. So who fucking cares? My God, I'm offended. Yes, you're offended at everything. Go find something else to be offended by. I'm offended by Barney and Friends episodes because Barney was specifically gendered male. When are we going to have transgendered Barney? I mean, he was purple after all, so, I think, what color does purple stand for on the LGBT thing? Is it like, I don't know, bisexual or something like that? Or isn't asexual like sort of a lavender and black or something? I don't know. I can't remember all their color-coded schemes. I know what the red and black flag means, though, at least I can remember that one. That's about all. Peace out.